So with the new Resident Evil 2 remake out now for a couple of weeks, we had a chance to fight both Mr. X and William Birkin, seeing how each of their pinnacle versions of their mutations are highlighted, helping make this new RE2 a classic in the making. Anyways, what is up you guys, this is DeVuH, and in this video we're going to be covering which boss monster was better overall in this new remake, either William Birkin or Mr. X, where we see how each of their versions gave us a different battle dynamic and approach to the game. And also we cover aspects like their overall appearance, to the different gameplay mechanics, and seeing who would win if both of these monsters went head to head at their pinnacle form. But before we get started, if you guys are interested in Mr. X or his Super Tyrant mutation, please feel free to check out my video analysis on them on my channel. I'll leave a card on the top right section of your screen so you guys can check it out. Alright, so starting off, we knew from the get-go that we'd be facing both of these iconic monsters in this new remake. Whether we found out from all the gameplay or teaser trailers before the game's release, or if you've been a long-time Resident Evil fan and knew that we'd have to fight both of these monsters eventually. But either way, we'd soon find out as to why these monsters made this new Resident Evil 2 remake such a great game. Alright, so let's first start off with a quick synopsis of William Birkin and his many G transformations. So William was a brilliant scientist who was working for the Umbrella Corporation, a pharmaceutical giant who was secretly conducting the research in their newly acquired progenitor virus, where they would later on develop the T-virus strain and would do the many countless illegal experimentations of human test subjects, including Lisa Trevor, the innocent daughter of George Trevor, the man who was the architect of the Spencer estate in the Arklay Mountains near Raccoon City. But what they found within Lisa Trevor, after the many years of experimentations, was that she had a new strain of the virus inside her body, which they dubbed the G-virus.
I will take over your research.
Wesker, Birkin.
This would be the focal point of William Birkin's research, where he would spend the vast majority of his days perfecting this more powerful strain. But it wasn't long before Umbrella sent their USS operatives on a mission to steal the G-virus samples from William, which subsequently almost cost the doctor's life after being shot multiple times.
You might hit the sample.
But unbeknownst to the Umbrella operatives, William was still holding a sample of the G-virus, which he then injected into his own body.
Are you telling me that he injected the G-virus into his own body?
The G-virus has the ability to revitalize cellular functions.
This would lead William on a rampage and following the USS operatives to the sewers, where he almost wipes out the whole squadron except for Hunk.
Shoot! Eat this, you freak! The bodies aren't stopping it! What is this thing?
With Mr. X on the other hand, was a byproduct of the mass production of tyrants that Umbrella was conducting, which they were able to do this by using human beings who are genetically capable of mutating into a tyrant, which the odds were 1 in 10 million. But luckily for Umbrella, they had an executive by the name of Sergei Vladimir, who was a viable candidate to be a tyrant, so Umbrella used his base genetic makeup and mass-produced these T103 Tyrants, because now in the original Resident Evil 2, we saw Mr. X dropped off in the RPD station via helicopter, where we saw him released from a cylindrical tank. Also on a quick note, this helicopter was also carrying the other T103 Tyrants that would later on be released throughout Raccoon City. Anyways, back to Mr. X. As we see him burst through the ceiling of the RPD station, you finally get our first close-up look at this behemoth. So with a quick synopsis out of the way, here in this new remake, the developers changed up some of the encounters and events that led the monsters to become who they were and how they met our characters. For example, we don't see Mr. X dropped off like he was from the original Resident Evil 2. Instead, our first encounter with him was when he lifts a large portion of a crashed helicopter on the second floor of the RPD station. Or with William, where we still see him ambushed by the Umbrella USS operatives, but wasn't shown the complete events where he went on a full rampage and killed the many soldiers at the sewers, except for a short video recording of him attacking one soldier in the remake. Alright, so let's move on to each of these monsters' overall gameplay. So like I mentioned earlier, we meet Mr. X in his base form at the RPD station, where he would stalk either Leon or Claire as they were traversing throughout the police department, where we saw Mr. X show his resolve of wanting to eliminate our protagonist, going to any lengths possible to catch up to our characters, where in both versions of Resident Evil 2, we see him break through walls, breaking cameras, And in this new remake, he would even follow us from room to room, as he was able to open doors, climb up stairs, and even go up and down on ladders. As with William, we mainly encounter him throughout the game as a set boss fight after reaching a certain point in the game, where we fight him in the sewer area in the new remake. Anyways, as we contrast these two behemoths, on one hand we have Mr. X in this new remake as a true pursuer type, where he never lets up on his constant grind of chasing our characters, as he attempts to complete his mission of eliminating any witnesses here in this new remake, giving us a constant stream of terror and tension during our gameplay. As with William, we don't experience this constant tension throughout the game, but instead we have so many bigger set piece encounters with him, which we had to overcome to move on to the next area. But while we had these two main antagonists in this new RE2 remake, it was only a matter of time when they finally encounter each other, as we saw William Birkin impale Mr. X from behind, ripping a large portion of this tyrant's body off, while at the same time William transformed fully into his second G transformation. But one would think it would be the end of all the discussion when debating who's the stronger monster between the two, but let's analyze and see who would truly win in their pinnacle form. Where we saw Mr. X transform into his Super Tyrant form when he receives damage due to the explosion in the Umbrella Secret Lab. Compared to William, where his pinnacle form in this remake would be his third G transformation when we encounter him on the west side portion of the lab.
Don't stop until it's finished! Trust me! This ends now!
So let's break down their overall gameplay during their peak transformation and see how our character stands up against their prime mutation. Alright, so starting with Mr. X's Super Tyrant form, where we encounter him during Leon's escape, showcasing his mutated right side of his body, with the enlarged arms with claws, to his half-torn face and his exposed heart. We begin our battle with this tyrant on a moving platform, as we watch the timer for the self-destruct system counting down to its imminent explosion. So here, the Super Tyrant is able to do a variety of moves, ranging from his standard slash attack, which has a wide range of an effect, but this can be avoided if we stay on the left side of his body. But also, our previous encounter with William's second G transformation can prepare us players for this overall attack. Also, this Super Tyrant can leap up in the air and lunge at us from a distance, covering the ground that we made during the boss fight. But his most devastating attack is when he gives off a massive roar, dragging his mutated claws on the ground as he does his instant kill move. With the only way of mitigating this attack was hitting the tyrant with one of our stronger weapons, or standing behind one of the rebels on the platform. In the end, this version of the Super Tyrant was a lot more challenging compared to his previous iteration, where he was extremely aggressive, giving us Resident Evil fans a truly memorable boss fight. But as much as we've seen the Super Tyrant improve on his base foundation from the original Resident Evil 2, how would he fare against William's third G transformation, where we see the potential of the G-Virus manifesting itself to its utmost physical peak? Alright, so let's break down the gameplay of William's third G transformation boss fight, where we get to see how he showcases his many attacks. Starting off, like the Super Tyrant, we see William do his standard slash attacks, which also does have a wide range of reach, but this time, William uses his multiple mutated arms with claws to his advantage, where he's able to slash away at anything in his path. But another aspect that sets this G-monster apart from Mr. X was his brute strength during his boss fight, where we see William perform feats of superhuman strength when he rips off a cylindrical tank containers from the environments, then he proceeds to throw it at us like it was nothing. Or how about after he gives off a massive roar and proceeds to rip off a large portion of the wall as he slams it to the ground. But of course he, like the Super Tyrant, does have a finishing move, where he would pin our characters down after leaping towards them, with the only chance to escape is by having a disposable weapon to use against him, giving us an opportunity to escape from his clutches. But if somehow we don't have the items necessary to thwart off this G monster, then this might happen. Overall, after finally beating William's third G transformation, we can in a way appreciate how powerful this monster truly is by looking around the environment and seeing the total destruction that this G monster can produce. So now, after we got the chance to see what both of these monsters are capable of, let's discuss who'd win between the two and see if we can explain as to why one would be more of an advantage over the other. So starting off with the most glaring aspects first, which was their overall mutation in this new remake, because as we saw William turn into his third G transformation, we get to see him in his utmost pinnacle form, where his body hasn't overly mutated due to the constant damage he's received, but instead has a more uniform and wholesome look to his stature, where his fullest capabilities aren't hampered by any biological defects or maybe a limiter like the Tyrants have, compared to Mr. X, where we see him halfway mutated due to the explosions, but still appears to have yet to unlock his fullest potential due to the partial trenchcoat limiter that's still on his body, which this Super Tyrant would have needed to be taken off just to try to go toe-to-toe with William's full-fledged third mutation. Also, the Super Tyrant's exposed heart outside his chest would have been the perfect target for William's many attacks, which in a way this overall mutation for Mr. X has given him a lot of strength, but also at the same time gave him a huge weakness, whereas with William, his G-mutated eyeballs was his primary weakness of sorts, showing some sensitivity when attacked at any one of them throughout his body. But compared to the Super Tyrant, William doesn't openly expose the cluster of eyeballs that's hidden behind his chest area, because it would take having all 3 G eyeballs in his body to be eliminated before he finally reveals his core. So if these monsters were to do battle, it would be an arduous task for Mr. X to not only eliminate the eyeballs throughout William's body, but also protect his exposed heart as well, possibly giving William a lot of openings when this Tyrant attacks. So from the mutation standpoint, we can see that Mr. X is already in a disadvantage, which he can't afford when going up against a G monster, because it only takes one wrong move or a lack of awareness of the surroundings, which Mr. X exhibited, that caused him to be impaled from behind and ripped apart by William. Alright, so the next aspect we'll cover between these two monsters is their overall brute strength, which was highlighted throughout the game, showcasing the reasons as to why Umbrella was so eager to research into the BOWs, where we saw these feats of superhuman strength when we saw Mr. X move a portion of a crashed helicopter like it was nothing.
Jesus Christ!
Or even when taking a direct hit from a vehicle, because we can still see that he's trying to move it out of his way after being hit by Ada. Where we can compare this with William, where we see him showcase how powerful he truly is, even during his second G transformation, which was during our boss battle with him at the sewers, where he was able to at least stop a full-fledged swing from a crane that has a crate attached to it. So overall, I'd have to give William another slight edge over this Tyrant in terms of strength, but it's not to say that Mr. X was completely helpless when it comes to this aspect, because if he was fully mutated like William, he too would probably be able to show off the same amount of power like the G monster. Alright, so let's move on to their movesets and see who would be more of an advantage over the other. Anyways, like I mentioned earlier, both of these monsters have their standard slash attacks that we the players have to be wary of. Also, both of these monsters can run towards our character, and they both showcase their finishing move, but here's where we see the slight differences in their attack. So like I mentioned earlier, Mr. X can be stunned from his instant kill move if we hit him with one of our more powerful weapons, but the same goes to William as well, where if he's hit right before he leaps into the air, he'll stop his attack, giving us a chance to move away and start attacking from a different position. But here's where we can see the Super Tyrant have a slight advantage doing his instant kill move, and that's because we're not given the option to escape once we're hit by him, where we see our character's demise the moment he comes in contact with us, compared to William, where we're able to escape from his clutches as long as we have a disposable weapon available. Also, on a quick note, I'd like to point out that their overall battle longevity may give one monster an edge over the other, depending on how long the fight between them takes, because I think it would be more of an advantage for William to eliminate Mr. X as fast as possible, because he wouldn't want to risk of sustaining too much damage and overmutate mutating into his 4th G transformation. So it would be in the best interest for the Super Tyrant to prolong their battle and make sure William receives enough damage so that the G-Virus would kick in and turn William into his more grotesque and chaotic form. So in the end, both of these monsters had something to show that would give the other monster a particularly hard time. But overall, I'd have to give a slight edge to William's 3rd form when facing this new Resident Evil 2 Remake's version of the Super Tyrant. But if somehow Mr. X would have been able to fully mutate like he did from the original RE2, then that would have been a different story. Anyways, what do you guys think about these monsters, and who do you think would win if they went head to head in the game? So let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on this topic. Also, if you guys did enjoy my content, please feel free to like and subscribe. Anyways, again, thank you guys so much for watching my Mr. X vs. William video, and as always, you guys have a great rest of your day, and this is Hey Deva signing out.